All right, welcome back. This is the Virtual Residency Workshop 2022. It's Thursday, June 30th, and our first session of the day is the Cyber Infrastructure Landscape Organizations. Our presenters are Tim Middelkoop and Dana Brunson from Internet 2, and I'm going to turn the show over to them. So take it away, Dana and Tim.
Thanks, Henry. Good morning, everyone. So Tim and I are at Internet 2, and we'll do our little introductions a little bit further into the call. But we are going to talk about the cyber infrastructure landscape, the organizations, following up Jacob's talk from Tuesday, where he covered the systems, services, and technologies. So we're going to have a little fun this morning to make sure everybody's woke up. Make sure you've had your coffee. But first, we're going to do some polling. And to get us started, we have the first one. What is your favorite breakfast food? And Tim, if you can put in the Menti link there, in case anybody doesn't want to use whatever those called, QR code, sorry. I clearly need some. And I will.
There we go.
Here. Oh, bagels.
So we can start off bagels and Wheaties.
Someone needs to put in bacon and my favorite, which is pizza, which is what I had this morning.
Bacon currently is the winner.
Ooh, biscuits and gravy.
Pancakes.
That's my other favorite. Okay, I'm glad bacon is winning. Okay. Bacon is really the best. I'll believe that.
Right now, it's even better than coffee.
So does everybody have the hang of Menti? Ham and cheese sandwich, granola. All right, everyone's good. Okay, so much like breakfast, the cyber infrastructure landscape. We'll go over here now. It has many options, especially when it comes to CI or cyber infrastructure organizations. And it's really more than any one individual can keep up. Even if it stayed the same, it would be hard, but it changes almost daily. So together, through all these communities we're about to talk about, we can have people we can ask and cover all these things. So today, for today's session, we're going to primarily focus on the organizations that are around communities. Again, referencing Jacob's great session on Tuesday where he covered systems and service providers. So next, we have another one. Which communities do you interact or participate in most? And so this is another poll. So go back, it should show up. There we go. I see, all right, CARC, Exceed, Campus Champions, 3 of my favorites. Software carpentry, so awesome. Linux Clusters Institute, USRC, O-Class, thanks for the plug there. Virtual Residency, of course. Everyone here, that's the parity bit test. You have to at least put that one in. Quilt. Awesome.
And you can pick your second one if you want as well.
I see in the chat someone's bacon and fresh tomato pizza. Ooh, that sounds wonderful. All right. Okay, you can keep filling that in while we head along. So now Tim and I are going to take turns telling you a little bit about how we came to love community and what it's meant to us. So my story is, if you don't know, I started very early, 2007. I got the job as a one-person shop at Oklahoma State University to lead their high performance computing center. Notice Oklahoma State OU, where Henry is the other university, just to be clear. But I was fortunate enough to meet Henry within 2 weeks of when I started. And I think that's exactly we met, and he was proposing the Oklahoma Cyber Infrastructure Initiative, which I hope many of you have heard of. And it's been like one of the best things that ever happened. And I counted up, Henry, it's been 15 years. And so this helped me tremendously. It got me to learn all sorts of things because I didn't know what I was doing. When I applied for this job, that was to run an HPC center, my sole qualification was I had used a supercomputer in grad school. And so I knew almost nothing. So Henry saved me from much despair and introduced me to others in the community. From there, I also met up with the Great Plains Network Cyber Infrastructure Program Committee, which is basically all the CI leaders in the 6 states roughly in the middle of the country, who are super helpful. And from there, the campus champions. And so me going from knowing almost nothing to trying to, being an introvert, my background's in math, so typically not the people that go out and are social butterflies. I mostly did everything by Googling it, right? And there was that one fateful day where I was Googling some issue that one of my researchers was having and got 0 hits. And I was at a complete loss. I was like, oh no, I'm going to have to talk to a human. It was terrible. But I was really brave and I did that. I talked to people and this was I was brave enough to email the champions list. And back then, there weren't that many people, only maybe 100. But still, it was a bit scary to admit that I didn't know something and to need help and all of that. But what I learned was once I got I don't know how many responses and so much help that over all this time through, Henry's super generous support and the rest of the community giving all sorts of examples of how to do research computing at institutions, I was able to, one, build my team. So if you see on this chart, the orange bars are the growth of the number of user accounts, researchers that were using our resources. The bars across, Bullet, Spur, Pistol Pete, Cowboy, Tiger are the resources, the things. And then the little people are the staff. So if I first got a National Science Foundation grant, MRI grant, that was Cowboy. And then the second one was for Pistol P2 over on the right-hand side. But it was, I'm going to just give Henry a lot of credit here for all his mentorship like he does now with this entire virtual residency to help people understand how to write grants, how to communicate with researchers, and all of the things we've experienced this week. But sometimes the way Henry does it is like, well, that sounds great, but it doesn't really work at my institution, or I don't know how. So hearing from all the rest of the community too, of how they've done stuff has been tremendous. And we'll do a little bit more deep dives into champions and Clark in a second. So what happened next was then I got really got so involved in champions, especially. And then Henry and I actually ended up running the champions, starting with Exceed 2, and then in Clark as well. And it's just doing these kinds of group activities at this level was so much fun that later on, Internet 2 came along. It's like, ooh, why don't you come work here? And I thought, okay, this would be great. It was really hard to leave OSU because, it's kind of been my baby to grow that research computing center and work with the great researchers there. But having Internet 2 be my platform to be able to have this kind of, national community organizing be my main job has been amazingly rewarding. And with that, I will hand it over to Tim to tell us more about his stories.
So I didn't spend as much time on my slide, and I don't usually talk about myself, so I didn't have any, fancy slides like that. So I thought I would just have a picture of myself, and this is kind of like the happiest day of my life slide. I don't exactly remember why it was taken, but it was kind of like me as a research computing director, and I think we had just got a new bit of hardware. But just like Dana, I started off as a director at the University of Missouri with 0 direct reports. I was a dual hire. So my wife graduated 6 months before I did. And I got my PhD, and I followed her, and I followed her for about 15 years. And so we got to MU, and I was only there for about 6 months, and there was a position open as the director of research computing. And I thought, hey, maybe I can do this. And so the more I got through the application process and read about the job, it's like, wow, this really matches my background. And I'd never thought that this could be an opportunity for me. I had spent a lot of time doing computational stuff in my advisor's lab. I got my PhD in industrial engineering, and we did a bunch of stuff in computation. I'd say I got my postdoc in the middle of my PhD, because I ended up building our own cluster and managing it and all those kind of things that you would tend to do as a research computing director. And I didn't know that I was getting prepared for it. So anyways, I got the job. I had not been involved with IT or as a kind of a staff person. Just being a faculty member, you kind of have your own set of folks there. And of course, panic did not set in. Ignorance is bliss. And so within the first couple of weeks, somebody said, hey, are you going to the GPN conference? And so I looked it up and said, yeah, I'm going. So I jumped in our van with one of our librarians. And at the time, the GPN annual conference was co-located with WILA, which is the Greater Western Library Alliance, I think. I should have looked that up. And so the librarians and the CI folks were together, talking about data and compute and things like that. And so, to this day, I have a strong relationship with that person that I spent, the weekend. Anyways, I got there and I started talking to people. It's like, wow, these are my people. It was really cool. I've been in a lot of communities. I've been kind of searching for my career for a long time. When I phoned my parents and said, hey, I got this job, they said to me, oh, wow, you finally got your first job. I just recently turned 40. It's like, wow, yeah, I guess that's true. So I've been in a lot of communities. I started off in industrial engineering. When I graduated from high school, there was no such thing as research computing and data. If you wanted to deal with computers, you went to computer science. And I really did not want to, study computers. I wanted to work with computers, and industrial engineering, in my opinion at the time, was the only really way of doing that. And so I went to a couple conferences. Their annual meeting is about 20,000. And so I can remember vividly standing in front of the doors with 15,000 other graduate students to race in and see who could get the food first. Because, a pack of starving graduate students with really good food, you got to watch your fingers, and it's all gone in about 10 minutes. So that was quite the thing. But anyways, also I've spent some time in energy management. So I learned all about three-phase power, that I would know that I would get to use it as a research computing director. A side note, the biggest motor I saw was 10,000 horsepower. That was kind of cool. It took an entire cooling tower just to cool the bearings. Anyways, I would go to these conferences and I would spend some time, and the first couple were really exciting. And then after a while, I would, like the second or third one, I'd be like sitting on the side going, why am I here? These aren't really my people. And that did not happen at GPN. And to this day, I still look forward to going to conferences like PERC. I'm super excited to go to that. And I can't stop for 3 days. I'm so excited to go those kind of things. And so this really was my calling. And so, I felt that early on, and it was people that I could trust. And so at the end of the conference, it's like I started to get the little panicky, and later on I got the imposter syndrome and things like that. But I always knew that I had this kind of network of folks that I could bounce some ideas off of. And so one of the reasons I show the picture here is this cluster. Me and the team spent a lot of time building and designing it, but it wasn't just us doing it. It was bouncing ideas off the community. And so we were able to take the best ideas from the people in the community that worked the best with our institution. And so we were able to build something that was successful. And so that was me standing in front of it. Part of that was we got a grant for a cyber team, a regional cyber team. That combined with, recognizing the value of these communities and getting more and more involved, campus champions, these things, they started taking up more of my time. And as the team grew, it started taking up more and more of my time. And it's like, I can't do everything. And so one day Dana said, hey, you want to join me at Internet too? I was like, oh, wow, I could do this community thing full time. And so I jumped up on the opportunity to do those kind of things. So now, instead of having, 8,000 cores to be worried about, all I have to worry about is my little Raspberry Pi you can see sitting in the corner there. So I am still looking for my Raspberry Pis given supply chain issues, but that is pale compared to what you folks are dealing with now in terms of supply chain issues as well. So, I have some first world problems. You have some real world problems with those. So anyways, that was kind of my origin story. Internet 2 has been a great place to contribute to the community and help move it on. And you'll see there are a lot of different communities, but there is a lot of different needs and expertise, and we all kind of fill in our a little niche. So, which leads us to our next poll.
All right, everybody.
So where are you on your CI journey? I know I've seen there's a lot of new folks here, but there is also a lot of folks here that have been in it for a while. And by the way, these are scientific terms that I came up with more than a few years. It's been a while now.
Too long to remember. So yeah, Tim's story is so great. It kind of I don't know why I thought of it when you were talking about the data center, but just to share, remember that there's no rules in this game. I remember in one of our cooling systems that we just put in, there was a tiny leak in the chilled water system that was very close to, the actual computers. And it was dripping. I forget the number of drops per minute, but I calculated it and it was going to be like a gallon a day. And it was when my now 16-year-old was a toddler and still in diapers, which I had out in my car in the parking lot. And so they hold so much and there was no way to put like a bucket under this thing. So we just changed the diaper that wrapped around the pole twice a day, and it was able to hold it until, I guess plumber is probably not the right word for the person that comes fixes it, but it worked out quite well. So you never know what kind of tools you might need in a data center. This is cool that we have so many people that are just starting out. So hopefully this is helpful. I don't know if we had the question earlier, but just maybe in the chat, how many of you are already part of the Campus Champions group? Maybe a lot. Okay, there's a lot. Awesome. All right.
Got some not yets.
Not yet.
Who isn't?
Well, we're gonna start, I think, go back to. So what we're gonna do, is it too long to remember? Does that person want to identify themselves? I think at least Henry fits in that category. I already revealed it's been, I guess, 15 years for me.
I'd rather stay anonymous.
Awesome.
It's me, Martin Herman Fondrato.
Nice.
I just joined ASU.
Ah, cool. We have lots of
Well,
good
Henry beats me for sure. 87.
Wow. Cool. All right. Well, let's go back over to, we have one more poll. How many people are in your organization?
I missed that. There's another one here. It's sort of about your background, right? So for me, I was in academia for 12 years, 15 years before I got into CI. So part of that was being sort of, training to be a research computing director. Some folks have come from academia or industry or those types of things. So you can move the slider. Hopefully I made the slider big enough so you can show it, but we're just kind of getting an idea, those are coming from academia and how long from IT and those types of things. And I'm glad I put industry in there.
So, and then how long were you in academia? Does that include?
That does not include graduate school.
uh,
I don't know. I guess that's a good question. It's open for interpretation. It's a mentee, so
I'm going to include grad school
yeah.
because otherwise my answer is boring. And because I took the very scenic route through grad school, starting in topology and then applied math and then pretending I could use a computer.
And I tell the postdoc in the middle of a PhD, but I was also at an institution that had a very lively graduate community. So it was very easy to start a barbecue at 3 p.m. and end at 3 p.m. on a Wednesday during the summer, or 3 a.m. on a Wednesday on a summer. So that may have contributed a little bit to my longer tour, but it was a great set of folks that I met and I still interact with today. But it was a diverse community, all right, and so there's nothing like talking about somebody's research over a beer at 2 o'clock in the morning, and then they go run away to refill the liquid nitrogen traps in their experiment. So.
Yes, indeed. But yeah, no, I've always been more of the early bird, and so we would all go to the bar by like 4 p.m.
Gotcha. And feel free to type your stories in the chats as well. Shall we move to the next mentee, Dana?
Yeah, that's good. We have, well, it's interesting here. We have quite a bit in IT before CI and quite a bit in academia before CI and industry. That's interesting. Very good. Yes. What's the next poll?
All right. How many CI people in your organization? And I determine organization as sort of the, different areas here. So full-time in your group, or part-time in your group, and then elsewhere in your organization. So
yeah, and this question for me, it kind of resonates because especially when I was, well, even when I had 5 people in my team at Oklahoma State, but the first several years when I was a single person, there wasn't anybody to really, talk to during the day about, boy, this is hard, or how do you talk to researchers, or any of that stuff, like all the things we've done this week. And so it wasn't until I was talking to my colleagues at other institutions that I had like a community to figure out what the job is, right? There wasn't, when we started, there was no like, this is what a research computing center or high performance computing center is supposed to look like. We kind of had to invent it as we went. And so, yeah, those of you that have, wow, there's 9 full-time groups. Oh, this is probably Arizona State, isn't it?
That's the average, I believe, Dana.
Yeah.
The bottom one resonates with me. So when I was at MU, we made the painful transition from a distributed to a centralized organization in terms of IT. So IT was everyone had their own IT organization. They'd run their own departmental servers or own email servers, and over the years, the infrastructure went together, but still they had reporting lines and things like that. So they brought those together. So I was part of that. I was responsible for getting all the distributed research IT folks together. And it was interesting. A lot of those folks, even though they were in a larger institution, were working by themselves, and they felt really isolated. And they didn't even have a national organization or community to go with. They were just on their own. And so a lot of some of the traditional folks were not happy about going to central IT because it was like us versus them thing. But the research folks were really excited because now we had these weekly meetings where they could talk together and share, just someone to talk to. And so that was really neat to me to see that there was more folks in the institution than just the central research computing group that I was involved with indirectly. And that was a great experience.
Great story. All right. I think that's the last poll before we go into the starter pack. Yeah.
Yes, I believe so.
All right. All right. So next phase of this session, we're going to talk about a starter pack of organizations that you might be interested. I know several of you have heard, well, all of you that have been attending this week have heard of these as we've moved along. So we're going to take a little deep dive into these 3, which Tim and I kind of decided as a straw straw pack. So use these as your starter pack of where you should begin. Plus they're, low effort. You can just join by mostly email lists, or in the case of PERC, going to a conference. But definitely these should be the basics that you get. So we'll start with the champions. And as I mentioned, this is the community that really got me thinking this was the best community in the whole universe. Started in 2008, funding under, you have Exceed now that we've heard about, that's soon transitioning to Access. But before Exceed started in 2011, there was TerraGrid before that. So that started in the Campus Champions program in 2008. Initially, it was meant to be like campus liaisons to help researchers use the NSF national resources. But very quickly, it turned into a community that shared everything anybody would ever want to know about research computing. Right now, we have champions in every US state and every EBSCOR jurisdiction, and they all help each other help their researchers. Henry and I are co-leads of the Exceed Campus Engagement, which includes the Campus Champions program, and we've been doing that since 2016. So here's the story on this is just the growth in the membership of the champions. So if you notice in 2008, it was, it was still kind of early for campuses around the country to really understand that people who help researchers use resources is a necessary and critical role at a university. But what the champions have done over the last, how long is that? 13 years. And through this growth have shown the world really, and the NSF and everyone else, that these people, this is, it started as like, oh, what is this job, to now a critical, if you want to be a competitive institution, you need to have people that fill these roles. And so kind of one of the legacies of Exceed is supporting this kind of community for so long. So this is, one of my favorite pictures was from PERC a few years ago. Right now there's over 750 campus champions. They have all sorts of the art, research, computing, and data roles, from CI leaders, the systems facing staff, students, the research facilitators, like we have all this week. It also includes various other organizations besides campuses, not-for-profit research organizations primarily. And then one of the things we were able to do with the Exceed evaluation team, with IRB approval and the whole 9 yards, is try to figure out what is the value of a community here. What have the campus champions done for enabling campuses to support research that uses cyber infrastructure? Part of it is just seeing how satisfied the champions were, which they are. So they found that even new members expressed exceptionally high satisfaction. It was interesting to see that having a champion at an institution was able to actually change how that institution thought about supporting research computing. And champions were that wanted a person that would be a champion on at their institution. Of course, champions have been since 2018 and before worried about how the community will sustain itself following Exceed, which happens this fall. And the other thing is that respondents, even from non-research intensive organizations and underrepresented groups, had positive experiences in this organization. I, for one, I became a champion in 2008, pretty early on, and was just amazed by the generosity of people answering questions for newbies. It's kind of, there's no no jerks in the community. It's very welcoming. Or one of my new favorite words is it's a convivial environment, right? Newbies are welcome to ask all sorts of questions, and you get all sorts of advice. And the threads that go on there are always super interesting. The main components is there's an all champions call every third Tuesday that has usually a presentation, often about national resources or panels with champions and how they do their day-to-day jobs. There's a chat session on the second Tuesday, mostly let people talk about what's going on. Sometimes it's to have a synchronous conversation that are going on in the email list. And then there's the email list, which is, I think, what the Campus Champions is really known for, is the active and very responsive list where you can, has anybody here ever asked or answered a question on the champion list?
I'll relate one of my stories from the champions list, and I'll kind of put it as some advice too. You know, whenever I see a question that I feel confident on answering, I spend time to answer it because, you know, I think it's part of building your capital, social capital with the community. And so if you're constantly answering questions that you can answer, then, you know, if you have a problem, somebody may be more apt to answer you, right? And so we were having problems with one of our storage systems, and it lasted about 6 months. It was a petabyte of storage. I'll go to actually what was wrong. It was a bad controller on one of the MDs, and it was constantly giving errors, and we could not debug it, and this, that, and the other. It was a confluence of a number of issues. And so we got close enough that we realized it might be hardware, and so we engaged our vendor, and at the same time we mailed the list. And before our vendor was able to schedule a call with some of the folks with their support team, we had an answer that worked from the list. And it was amazing to get that information. And it wasn't one individual, it was like 3 or 4 different individuals problem solving together. It was like, oh, I've seen this problem, this is what ever. And so it was really amazing to solve that real problem that we had. So that was my kind of my story from asking a question on the list and getting some amazing response. Something that I don't know if they would have been able to solve it, to be honest, the vendor.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I remember when, I think it was the first cluster that I deployed after I started, and the vendor, who shall remain nameless, struggled mightily to get it installed. And since I was a one-person shop, I went ahead and paid lots and lots of money for them to do the deployment. But they had trouble, and we were small enough that, you know, we weren't their highest priority. And so through the champions list, I was able to get enough help to figure it out ourselves, which was wonderful and made me look like a hero on campus, which is always nice. So for those of you who want to become a champion and haven't yet, it's relatively simple. You can email this email address, info@campuschampions.org, and Kathy, who's on our team, will send you a Word document that you get to fill in and have your supervisor sign. And then you'll get put on this website, and you'll get added to the email list. And that's how it works now. Things will change at the end of August when Henry and I and the rest of the staff will pass the baton to the elected leadership team. So that'll be exciting times. And in fact, if you're interested in, you know, being part of the people who help run these communities, I think there's plenty of opportunities there for people who would like to get the baton handed to them. So let's see. So next up, we're going to talk about CARC. I think a lot of you are familiar with CARC. I see a lot of people who are very actively engaged in CARC here. So CARC is the Campus Research Computing Consortium. It was originally funded by an NSF, what they call the Research Coordination Network grants. And that that was, I think, 2016. In fact, you know, thanks to the pandemic, we've been doing several no-cost extensions because we were unable to spend money for people to travel anywhere. But today is the very, very last day of the award. So as of tomorrow, it will be 100% unfunded. But there's a little caveat there, but I'll get into that in a minute. But so there's several parts, and the one we're going to talk about, I'll talk about more in a second, is the people network. But before I do, you can see in this graphic, which is a bit of an eye chart, how it's split up. So the people network, which we'll dive into, there's also these working and interest groups, and you can see here all the various ones. So the research, computing, and data capabilities model, the professionalization working group that spawned the career arcs working group. There's previously a stakeholder and value propositions group, ecosystem working group. Currently, there's a decadal survey working group going on, EBSCOR cyber infrastructure working group, and an engagement working group that has since evolved into what we've termed an operations group. And that's where also logistics sits and the chair's leadership team. So it's kind of cool because you can think of this CARC as infrastructure to support community doing things together, right? So all these working groups are doing things because we as a whole have decided that they're important to do. The newest thing that's part of this is RCD Nexus, which we got funded last summer. So it's funded as an NSF Cyber Infrastructure Center of Excellence pilot, and it's supporting the capabilities model and professionalization and career arcs, and 2 new interest groups on staff and student workforce development. So you've probably seen some emails from me or Daphne about Nexus Day at PERC, which is going to be a lot of fun. And you can join, we'll talk more about that. So let's take a little sidetrack here. Who's heard of the facings? Anyone? Maybe. Let's see. So let's see the facings. So just in case anybody isn't, several years ago, there was a workshop where we had some cyber infrastructure leaders meet up with a bunch of social scientists, and we were trying to explain to them what it is we did all day. I don't know if you've ever had to explain to somebody that doesn't live in our bubble what you do all day, but I know I often kind of resort to, well, I hang out on Zoom and type emails. But so one person finally piped up and decided to say this out loud. And so we have, these aren't, they're not mutually exclusive. Some people wear all of these hats, or a mixture of them, and they're not titles either, because as you've seen around, people have titles all over the place. And so thinking about what they focus on. So researcher facing, right, is what this is about, research, computing, facilitation. So they can do outreach, education, training, facilitation. There's systems facing, which includes, what you might imagine, systems planning, engineering, network engineer, all of those types of things. Data facing, data creation. You might find research data librarians in this group, policy compliance, those kinds of things. Software facing kind of has 2 angles to it. One is kind of the software package management, installation, optimization, stuff like that. The other side is more of the research software development, so USRSE, for instance, and then strategy and policy facing. So the CI leaders trying to get the decision makers to hand you buckets of cash, those kinds of things, and then, influencing even national policy at that level. Yay, research data librarian in the crowd. Good. And so we've adopted this throughout the CARC working group. So not only in the people network, but this is how the professionalization working groups have structured the, job family framework, the capabilities model, career arcs, all of these things. And so back to the,
Dana,
yeah.
we have a Menti on this. I think it'd be a great
Oh.
time to do that.
I
People
see,
have already
okay.
been answering.
Oh, good. Let's switch over.
And so what is what facing do you spend a lot of your time on? So we recognize that everyone spends some of their time on all of them, but if you spend most of your time, maybe 50-50 or one and everything else. And one thing about the facings, and we use the term facing because, you know, when you're a research computing director center with a staff of one, you do all the facings. And same with 2 or 3. It's not until you get to much larger that you can actually do some of these specializations. And that's why we use the terms facings. Sort of to jump back into my origin story, one part that I forgot to include in that was that I was involved with some of these workshops. So I was there in one of the facings. I think I was in the software and data facing. They were combined at that point in time. But for many years, and I continue to do so, is that those workshops were one of the most professionally rewarding experiences of my entire life. It was like after one of those, I was just jumping up and down and excited for weeks after, because I got to be involved in something that was so, to me, was so eye-opening and potentially changing to the field, to think about these things in a formal way and have all these people come together and work with them one-on-one to develop something like this together. And so it was something that I continue to be very proud of, that I was involved with. And that really that experience led me wanting to do it more and more. And I kept doing it more and more. And that's why I eventually transitioned to internet too, because, you know, I kind of wanted to do this for my full-time job. So now that's why I'm happy. So where do you spend a lot of your time on? And it seems like we have a lot of researcher facing folks here.
Yeah, so for multiple, right, fill it in where you spend most of your time, but in the chat, if you'd like to put in how many facings, how many hats do you wear? How many of these do you spend? I'm really curious if there's people with 6 or 5, or if you are all of the hats. Yep, definitely. I think I was never so great at software, so I only ever wore not all of them, 2 to 3, yeah. And I think like data facing, most of these you never get to entirely remove the researcher facing. I don't know of anybody in a group that gets to completely avoid talking to your constituents. So good. Excellent. Vast majority of researcher facing. Well, you know, researcher facing is the coolest facing. I can say that. Don't at me, as they say. Okay. All right. That's good. I'm not seeing any more come in except for in the chat. Mostly systems. Oh, towards NIST. So here's a couple of caveats. Notice, where is security in this? Does anybody want to take a guess?
Everywhere?
Very good. That's the hope. There's an issue with putting something everywhere, as often it gets slipped and it ends up nowhere. So that something that we need to put some good thought and effort into, to making sure it doesn't disappear just because it's not listed. Anything else that's missing? Oh, I think maybe that's it. Good. All right, let's head back over here. So the people network has these tracks or these ideas. So notice there's one slightly different, is emerging centers track. This was started by community demand for basically for people who are in those situations where they're wearing all the hats and are struggling with some of those kinds of bootstrapping their RCD capabilities on their campuses. Software facing also is actually, we point people to US RSC for that. But it aims to build and foster these inclusive communities that have a monthly call for each of the tracks. There's an email list, and best of all is all these people. So this is within CARC, but each track runs it. It's independent, right? The track coordinators and their steering committees decide what they do. The track coordinators meet together every couple of weeks to compare, you know, ideas and what they might do together and share best practices on putting all these things together. And they have a shared infrastructure, how to do all the logistical things, like how to do call documents, how to step down and bring in a new coordinator. So there's wonderful documentation that's been done with this group to help them run the community calls as efficiently as possible without while minimizing the labor involved. Because I think several of these people are either here now or have been here throughout the week and given talks as well. Again, opportunities, if you're interested in this, there's a great benefit to, one, just joining and attending the calls, seeing how they're going, but also joining as part of the steering committee. Great way to build your networks and make good friends. And so here's just how it's grown over the years. I think Lauren, Michael, and I originally founded this in late 2018. I've since passed the baton, but it's grown significantly. So now we're nearly 1,200 people in the People Network at large. And all of them have grown tremendously as far as getting people involved in the leadership. So some of the highlights is 25 different people. Notice all volunteers are involved in leadership for the calls. They have been doing some joint calls with USRSE, which is nice because they really cover the research software side of things so well. All the calls are then put on YouTube and we're getting lots of views there. And then of course, strategy facing, which doesn't exist yet, is coming soon. And there's a link there. And all you have to do to join CARC is fill out a Google form and it'll ask you which ones you want to be a part of. Any questions or comments on that one? Before I head into the next thing. All right, so there's that. I think we did the poll already. So the last one in the starter pack is PERC. We don't have a poll, but if you want to put in the chat, is everyone going to PERC? Because if you are, look what I will have for you. Stickers. I got a CARC sticker and a champion sticker and Internet 2 stickers to adorn your laptops. You will be the coolest ones there.
And that's why we call it the starter pack.
The starter pack.
Get your starter pack.
Yeah. Why doesn't PERC have stickers? That's quite an oversight. So yeah, bring stickers.
We'll have to bug them about it.
Yeah, so if you do have stickers, laptop stickers from wherever you're at, we do have an Internet 2 table we're promoting as a community table. So if you have something cool that you want to share, bring it to the Internet 2 table and tell people to get it there. So anyway, so PERC is the de facto annual meeting. So if research, computing, data, or cyber infrastructure, we're already, a professional society, PERC would be its annual meeting. If you haven't been, it is awesome. Especially this year we finally get to see each other in person again. I don't know if many of you have gotten to see 3D humans outside your bubble yet, but it's fascinating. They're really cool. You can see how tall people are, for instance. It's all about the people. It's also good content. I think over the years since PERC has existed, that like the workforce development track has really matured. Lots of interesting content that can help you. So it's the kind of conference that as a RCE or CI professional, you actually do want to listen to some of the talks and read some of the papers. There's also posters, panels. If you've been in the virtual residency program, you've experienced the paper writing apprenticeship and worked on that. And I think there's a BOF this year, right, Henry? Our BOF for the Sifted grant will be there. A lot of great content, and meet us all in person. It'll be great. So. Okay, now we're going to switch over to more Menti polls. So we're going to start with, so for those of you that are getting started, what do you need the most? And this is where we're going to do a little transition. Ready, Tim?
Yeah, I'm ready.
So go ahead and fill in this poll. There we go.
And the idea here is this it's for the folks that are getting started, right? And so we'll have a question for those of you who have been around for a while. And we're kind of doing a sort of like a matchmaking experience here. You can only be a newbie once, right? I see training, support, mentorship. And we will show you some training resources. Congratulations, you are a part of one of the best training programs for RCD professionals, the virtual residency. So you've accomplished step number one. Also, I don't know if you've mentioned this before, Henry, but the virtual residency does not end when the session's over, right? It continues on, and there's lots of great experiences to get involved with and learning on how to write papers and how to write grants and things like that. And, Henry may have talked about this before. He will continue to do it, but definitely get involved with that as well. Support, mentoring. I know I always like to help folks out that are new in the career path. One of my most proudest moments as an RCD director, and kind of annoying, was we had a student. He was a non-traditional student, finished his GED, started at MU, and started just volunteering at the data center, doing, moving boxes around. And he came involved with our group, and we sort of trained him up. And when he graduated, he went to tech, and we lost him. But as a research computing director, it was awesome to see that somebody was able to come in with an undergraduate and graduate as an RCD professional. And so, a lot of us have different origin stories. And those of us who've been around for a while, really want to help grow our community and our professional society. So reach out to folks that if you happen to get a rapport with somebody, don't be afraid to establish even an informal mentorship with them. All right, let's do some matchmaking here and move on to the next one, which is, for those of you who are familiar with the communities, what do these organizations provide? So it's a little bit blank now. Either my internet's about to fall over, or there we go. Knowledge, interviews, support. And I guess given our previous graph, there'll be less responses on there. Shared experience, connections, camaraderie, community. Yeah, a lot of these are resonating with me as well. Cool. Well, as you can see, there is a lot that people need, but there's a lot that these communities offer as well. And so this is kind of to motivate the question of, where do you go next, right? And so Dana gave you kind of like the starter pack, right? Here's your starter pack that everybody in research computing and data professional areas gets with. Here's your welcome kit. But then you get an add-on pack. So just like with stickers, your add-on pack might be related to what you do most of the time as we get more specific. So for example, if you're software facing, the next thing, the add-on pack you should get is the USRSE. So go check them out, join that organization, get involved with that. If you're system facing, go join the SIG HPC SysPros Slack channel. There's lots of folks there that have gone through the same war stories as you have, and it's either a sympathetic ear or your hair's on fire and you need some help. That's a great channel to get some additional help. Data facing, RDAP, CASC for policy facing, and you're here now with the researcher facing, the virtual residency program. So these are the add-on packs that you get as a research an RCD professional is you go do this. Now, this is sort of like the next one, and there's more, but these were the ones that we thought that you should go next, because as a new person to the field, somebody could rattle off a whole bunch of things. We want to keep it tractable. But once you get your starter pack, then you can start playing with all the little communities and what they do and their differences. And so now I'm going to show you a resource that I've been working on recently. So just a little warning here, it's brand new. It's got a lot of things that are missing, and there's maybe some mistakes as well, but it's also meant to be as a community effort to contribute to it. And in reality, it was just a way of like getting in my mind, where do we go for the individual groups? How do we organize it? Who's out there and those types of things. So if you want, you can link on the start here. Dana, do you want to drop the start here in the chat? And this is the start here button. So this is Airtable. It's a cool tool. It's basically just a simple database that you can view things in different areas, and it's inspired by the CNCF, the Cloud Native something Foundation, the folks that do Kubernetes. They have an ecosystem map, and if you think ours is crazy, theirs is totally insane. You should go check that out. But this is our starter pack here, our start here. And so it contains up-to-date information about the different things. And here's our next pack. What do you do next? And of course, it takes a while to load. I do have screen captures just in case something melts down. And look here, what's first? It's the Oklahoma virtual residency, which you're part of there. And you can see that Henry's a part of that. So Henry, since you didn't have a logo, we took the opportunity to add one to you. So if you'd like to update that at some point in time, just let us know.
I think that's the perfect logo myself.
And there's a couple more here. So for those of you who are part of the minority serving, tribal serving, all those different folks that are not typically R1 and R2s. There's the Minority Serving Cyber Infrastructure Consortium, and it's another pilot COE that's involved with internet too. So if you're part of that community, that's where you should start next, right? If you are heavily into security, when I started, security definitely was not really a facing, but now with CUI and all these things that are going on, trusted CI is a great place to start. And here's the other ones that I've mentioned as well. So that's the different organization starter pack. And so these are the things that you should get involved with right away, the communities that you should be involved with. The next one we have is onboarding. And so, on day one, what should you do? Well, the first thing you should do is visit the Oklahoma Virtual Residency Program, sign up for the next thing that they have. Make sure you get your ORCID ID, right? Some of you who are coming from IT may not be too familiar with an ORCID ID, but it's a way of associating your papers and your contributions with your individual identification. So get your ORCID ID. And so that's everyone you can see the tech community here, RCD professional is with that. If you're systems facing, sign up for Linux Clusters Institute if you're not too familiar with the research computing and data systems. As you've seen in earlier presentations, research computing is not enterprise IT. There's a lot shared there, but there's a lot different as well, right? And if you're in strategy and policy facing, sign up for the research compute teams newsletter. It shows up on Saturday. I grumble every time I see it because it is usually like 3 or 4 pages of awesome things that I really want to read. And so that's why I spend my Sunday afternoons or my Saturday mornings because I know why I want to get through it. And there's some great advice on there. You can see also we have some tags. So for instance, they have a job board. They also use Airtable. They have news as well. So you can figure out what some of the things that is going on associated with it. If you click on any one of these, they'll expand to more information. Now, as you can see, there's Henry doesn't do the Slack or LinkedIn. I may have entered this a little bit early, but there's other organizations that have lots of information as well. So, about blogs to job links. So you can quickly go to different things. So if you're in a search of a job, you can take a look at the data table and open up all the job locations that are associated with that. So once you've got your starter pack and your add-on pack, then you can go explore the entire thing. And this is the table view here. And so you can take a look at all the different organizations. You can filter and things like that. And see all the organizations. So for example, again, on jobs, research computing teams, you can just open those up there. And I've missed some, and we plan on expanding it, but we just, this was really motivated to get this sort of ready for folks by this presentation that we're giving here today. We've also created some facing specifics ones and also lenses. So we have the facings, we also have the security lens. So if you're in security, you take a look here, the regulated research community, that is definitely something you want to get involved with. They have an active Slack channel there. And there seems to be every week a different newbie that asks all kinds of great questions, get some great answers. If you're networking, and also we'll talk about this a little bit later, but what you should be doing with your add-on packs is you should have a regional add-on pack. So for me, I'm in the Great Plains Network. That's how I got started into really got going in research computing. So I would go and find out the Great Plains Network. They have an annual meeting, and there's other networking as well. Most states have a network as well, or an organization. So there's, where did it go? Where's One Okie? It's not listed here. Oh my goodness, it's missing. I didn't add the tag, so I'll have to add that. But the One Okie network, you can get involved with the community, and every state and regional is different. So go explore yours, find out what's going on. And of course, you notice I missed some things. If you go up here, the base guide, there is a suggest an entry, so you can fill out a brand new one, or if there's some changes, just fill it out. It won't go live. We have to kind of approve it. And if you got some suggestions for improvement, go click on the Google form here, and we're open for suggestions because this is brand new. So these are the different perspectives as well. I really wanted to show off the One Okie one, so we can go to the gallery view here. Where do you go? Yeah, Show Me CI, Science Gateway Institute. So we have a lot of different things here that you can get involved in. You can search on tags and things like that. And let's see, I think that's all I was going to cover. What questions do you have about this? Is Airtable discoverable from i2? No, this is the world, this is the friendly user mode. So you have all those researchers. I know I had one or two that were absolutely awesome at breaking the cluster, but they also tell you where it was broken and things like that. And sometimes they'd even give you suggestions on how to pick up the pieces. So this is our friendly user time and help with our input. You can find the links on the document for the virtual residency for this session. And as it continues to grow, we'll start showing it out there as well. Can you show us how to add a suggestion? So when you get into this view here, if you click on RCT data entry, you can't actually edit it. There's a link hidden back here that you can click on, or you just go about the guide and there's a suggestion up here. We try to make this as easy as possible. I was involved with an effort at MU for 18 months to figure out how to make something similar for CI resources. It just was so much effort and so heavyweight that it just it got created, it got demoed, and it was never ever used again. It was out of date. And so the idea is to make this as simple and as easy as possible, so people can update it. And so it's not fancy, not a lot of development. So we're just trying to do the best that we can. Any other questions that we have here? All right, so we do have some questions out of it. Yeah, wait, there's more. What organizations did we miss? So you saw a bunch of them here. Make your suggestions now, and we can add some of those. Better yet, go ahead and grab that suggestion link, and maybe you want to drop that in the chat, Dana. on going ahead and suggesting them. NC-WIT. So this is an example where RMAC's up there, where you may not know what the acronym is. Unfortunately, we use lots of acronyms. You can go and use this to decodify your acronym rings as well. Do we have a funding funders list? Yeah, that would be a good one as well. NSF, that question, were you thinking of things like NSF or maybe a little bit more specific?
That's what I was thinking. What, I don't know, whatever you guys know about.
Well, this is really meant to be a community effort, right? So I have my biases in my background, and I just did it from my perspective, and then suggestions from folks. Women in HPC, yes, that one's there. NIH Cloud Strides. We started to add individual projects like that, but when you get into that sort of that tier, there is a ton of stuff out there, and it's hard to recognize which ones are active, because there's many of them out there that, you know, the last web update on their website's 2018, but you know that they're very active in their Slack and email, and you can't really tell that. And some of them are like, they're just a website. You know, there was lots of centers I've been involved with they're just a website, and that's all that they do is you put your face on a website. So those maybe not, we wouldn't include those. So those are the two.
Question.
Yes,
So
yes, Dana.
like some of the like the funding agency suggestions. So what do you all think as far as adding that to this particular table, or having like a second table that covers different full areas? The concern is, right, the potential things we could put on one table is overwhelming. Okay, separate table. So maybe some suggestions on like greater categories of types of tables. Like this is meant as kind of communities, even though some of these organizations do more than that. And then link them together, I suppose. Yeah,
because the kind of, as you grow in scope, it becomes more difficult to fit it into the columns of the table. And so it's been trying to have a balance of things. That's the nice thing about the Airtable is you can quickly filter it on what you're looking for, right? So if I want to filter, this one's by status, let's go data facing, right? You can see that it's filtered by status as is active, and the community is data facing. So you can, you know, do whatever you want. So I was experimenting here. So, you know, tags has any of state. And let's say you're only interested in Oklahoma. I can say that the state, I think is location. And I am going to be selfish, and I want everything in Missouri. And so the only thing in Missouri is show me CI, but you can do those types of things as well.
Yeah, I like, yeah, we can do all the things Jacob covered in the CI landscape services and that stuff.
And a quick, well, let's skip this one here because I think we're getting low on time. Of course, Dana and I was worried we wouldn't have enough time to get going, but we seem to have been able to do that. There's my, just in case it didn't work, slide to share. And this is our wrap up slide. So do you want to do this one, Dana?
Sure. So here's just a review of what you should be doing. Not should, but should you choose to take this challenge, attend PERC at least once. This is the people this like are here and more, but not too many. Attend supercomputing at least once. I know the first time I went to supercomputing, as I mentioned, I was a little scared, so I was mostly in the corner in the fetal position, but once I got the hang of it, it was super fun. Read more about the facings. There's a link there if you want to get to know what those things mean and how your group fits into that. Attend some training, which you're already doing, so you can check that one off your box. And then join the various add-on packs, you know, the people network facing groups and USRC and others, and find your state and regional networks, right? There's a lot going on there these days that didn't used to be. I know OneOki combines the cyber infrastructure and the networking groups. GPN does this. I know several other of the R&E networks are trying to really support research more and more. And all of you can be a part of that and never stop learning. Tim, I think you probably have more to add. So,
No, that covers it for me as well. The last one is never stop learning, right? We're always trying to keep ahead of everything. And be a part of the community as well, right? We are a growing community, a growing profession, and we need everyone else's support. And so one day we hope that you know, our 8-year-old says, you know, mommy, I want to be an RCD professional. Dana tells that story much better than I do.
yeah, that's my vision. That's how I convince people. That's how we know we're successful in doing all this, is when kids actually can say, oh, I want to be a research computing and data professional. And then they Google it and they find all these resources to help them figure out how to be that. And I think, you know, some nice videos or TikToks or whatever that show how awesome being in this community is. Awesome. Thank you all so much. I think there's maybe a couple minutes left. If we can always talk more if you want, but thank you so much for your attention. And thank you, Tim, for collaborating on this.
It was fun.
Great.
Thank you.
And for making that wonderful Airtable. What a resource.
Yeah, and it's really meant to be a community thing, and just play with it. You can make a copy of the base and mess around with it. Really easily change the columns, this, that, and the other. And if you find something that works better, go ahead, adding tags, those types of things, just drop it in the suggestions. And we look forward to your input.
Yeah, there's a good question here. What are the communities doing outreach efforts to high schools and undergrad students in the life of the CI professionals? So I think there's several campuses and groups that are doing stuff in this area. And there's a CARC interest group starting up around student programs that is one of their objectives is to kind of collect these things so people can be more aware of them, and developing some stories and best practices around that. I don't know if anybody here is part of that group. But check it out. There'll be more information, but if you're on the People Network list, you will hear about that group and are welcome to join it at whatever level, or wait and see what they come up with and learn from it.
Yeah, and if you get involved with grants, there's always a need for a broader outreach, and we really need to, you know, start the pipeline earlier. So if you have some ideas and you know people that are writing some grants, so get involved with them and get some resources to help your local high schools and K through 12s and or potentially something that could be modeled at a larger scale. The nice thing about RCD is that a lot of the things that you can do remotely at a national scale, and the entire world's been trained up on Zoom now. So
one time while I was at Oklahoma State, one of my friend's kids was in preschool, and so this is one of my favorite points. Was we had a little Raspberry Pi cluster with a hydrodynamics code, and the case was Legos, and we took it there, and has an Xbox controller and shows parallelization. But I took a little baby supercomputer to a preschool. So preschool outreach, folks, get them while they're young.
yeah, and when Raspberry Pis come in stock again, they're a great tool for gaining interest. They can go to career fairs and things like that, and you can show it. And they're also great training tools. They are little mini clusters, are powerful enough to actually do some real science, and you can play with the latest technologies on that as well. There's nothing like getting your hands dirty in terms of networking and things like that. There's only so much you can visualize when it comes to virtual environments in the cloud.
Thank you all for your attention. Henry, do you want to take us into break?
Yes, thank you, Dana and Tim. I think this was absolutely amazing. I really appreciate you guys doing this. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recording.